All right, so is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
All right, seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so let's move on to 2A then.
Music program update.
All right, I'm going to let you take this one away, Ms. Young and Ms. Westfall.
All right, thank you, Ms. Weiss, I appreciate it. Good evening, everyone. How's everyone doing? Good to see all of you.
Here.
On this like super like windy, cold, chilly night. I was just trying to retrieve my dog as I walked in the door and I was like, oh my gosh, it's freezing out here. So I know that Ms. Weiss asked for us to give an update on some of the changes that have been made within the music program, just to have an opportunity to see sort of how things are going. I did ask the music department to just kind of have an opportunity for them to speak, and so that their voices are also heard in this process on what the current state of the music program is. And so just to kind of update some changes that have been made is at one point last year, and this is varied in the time that we've had the music program at Glen Hills, that we've gone from 3 teachers to 3.5 to I think at one point maybe 4, Tim, at some point in time.
Yeah, even more way back when, but yeah.
Yeah, right. And so really kind of coming into this year and looking at some of our enrollment trends, some of the decisions that were made or to have the 3 music teachers, 1 for general music and choir, and then orchestra and band, and really to make sure that we're providing those offerings to all students, grades 4 through 8. Prior to that, our students in grade 4 were not able to access band. We saw a serious decline in the numbers and some attrition that was happening over years, and particularly COVID really impacted that. So to try to seek to build some of those numbers back up again. And what I heard loud and clear from the community last year was that there was a desire for students to all partake in music. So making sure that, unlike our partner districts, we didn't offer an out, and that all of our students took place in a performing arts program, and that being a music class. And so between that and then really making sure that we're fulfilling the DPI requirements of having to offer an opportunity for students to have music in grades 4 through 6. So what we did is we created the choir class for grades 6 through 8, orchestra and band for 6 through 8, and then grades 4 and 5 have a general music offering, and orchestra and band to opt from. We have our 2 largest classes are situated at grades 8 and 7 this school year. We found when we got into the programming components of it, we had many students who opted for choir because they had not had this opportunity. So we are kind of feeling the pain of that change a little bit at grades 7 and 8. So we created a non-performance chorus class where students got to explore some of the options around music, and they rotate between Mr. McCarthy, Miss Woodward, and Miss Smurs, and a placement in the library as well. So that's kind of how we've worked that out. So I am going to turn things over to the music department and let them talk a little bit about some of the things that are going well and some of the areas that they have as being continued growth areas for us at Glen Hills.
All right, thank you, Ms. Young, and good evening, and good to see Board Member Bailey and Board Member Wynn. Nice that you're with us, and we do appreciate the opportunity to give you a little perspective from our side on how things are going and where things are at. So I know it got sent out this afternoon, but I'm not sure it made it to you, to the board members. Did you get a document called Music Department Curriculum Input? Okay.
No.
All right. Well, I think what we're going to do then is we prepared a document with some points on it that we wanted to emphasize tonight. So we'll just kind of go through that document. It's 1 page. It's not a 16-page dissertation. And we'll just highlight the items that are on it. So it starts with a little background of where we're at. And Ms. Young did a wonderful job of trying to succinctly describe what we're doing right now at Glen Hills in terms of music. So to start with, currently only students who are new to band and orchestra in grades 5 through 8 receive a group lesson. Students who have been in band and orchestra prior do not receive a group lesson. The choir program does not provide group vocal lessons to all of its scholars. and that's a scheduling thing. With our 5 classes that we teach, well, we'll get to it in a bit, but without teaching into our prep and planning periods, there's just no time for the lesson instruction.
Lessons are the cornerstone of the music performance classes. They allow for focused instruction and provide a meaningful check-in for our scholars.
So right now, music or lessons aren't considered part of the teaching load because we do the 5 rehearsals a day for the 5 ensembles. So that the lessons that we are teaching through our prep, we're teaching the students who are new to the performance groups during our prep period right now.
And currently, a student who is involved in band, chorus, orchestra, or the 4th and 5th grade general music component receive, it's scheduled as a 50-minute class that meets every day of the week. And we do have a rotation where one day of the week, students go to a social emotional learning option or a library option. And those 2 prep periods that we do have in the day, that's the time that we're referring to in terms of teaching the band lessons that we do teach to the new students, the students that are new to orchestra, new to band. That's when we're accommodating those students.
The chorus, non-performance 7th and non-performance 8th grade class were created to reduce about by half the number of students that were assigned to the regular chorus class, because having 50, 60 kids in a classroom was not very COVID friendly and singing wise. And then it's being taught by myself, Ms. Woodward, and Mr. McCarthy. And we're each responsible for teaching 2 classes a week. Mr. McCarthy on Monday teaches non-performance 7th grade and then non-performance 8th grade. And then I teach on Wednesdays and every other Thursday, and then Ms. Woodward on Friday, respectively. So an overload stipend of $750 have been offered to myself, Ms. Woodward, and Mr. McCarthy to address the additional responsibilities of teaching an extra or like overload class.
So the students, the course MP scholars were placed in that class because they didn't want to sing. And so that gave them a music opportunity that didn't require a performance.
And the size of those chorus NP classes, currently they're growing, but 29 and 32 respectively. And the lack of student choice that Ms. Woodward just alluded to do make it a difficult classroom. It makes some difficult issues for classroom management.
So currently requiring scholars to take chorus non-performance has not produced the desired learning outcomes.
Eliminating the general music option for students in grades 7 and 8 has had a tremendous negative impact on the performing groups for 7th and 8th grade to absorb so many extra students, especially 8th grade is quite a few students in that class.
Ms. Young had talked about I think she talked about it tonight, the pull-out program for the library SEL. And what that has done is it has lessened some of the numbers in our groups in terms of size, but it also has a flip side to it where we don't have a full rehearsal with our scholars because they're rotating out of there one day a week in grades 4 through 6. And then conversely, in grades 7 and 8, because those students who go to library and SEL all come out of the band on the same day, it means the other 4 days of the week we have our rooms are pretty full. We're at capacity.
With the 30-minute pullout for math interventions, it usually results in some of our students who need more time with a teacher. It results in them missing a majority of the rehearsals every day. And I've felt the impact with students coming in almost like 40 minutes into the period.
Beth, I should jump into that. There's a math intervention component that we did recently start to help address some of the needs for the students who need math support. Those students are also coming out of that block of time, that rehearsal time that we work with.
So I guess at this point, the chorus non-performance students have received a half of a year of music offering, and that fulfills the DPI requirement for students in grades 7 through 8, because the requirement is that music instruction, including general music, vocal music, and instrumental music, is available to all students in grades 7 through 12 and shall be taught by a licensed music teacher. So that at this point, we've fulfilled their requirement for music time.
So again, we do appreciate the chance to share with you our perspective on things, and we thought strongly too that if we're going to tell you how things are going and what things we'd like addressed, we'd also like to throw out there some possible proposals, solutions for this year, for getting through this year. So our first proposal addresses specifically being able to teach lessons, instrumental lessons and vocal lessons to all of the students in our program. So proposal number 1, the time that was used to teach course MP classes could now be used as group music lesson time. It could be utilized on a rotating basis so that all music scholars could receive a group lesson at least once every 3 weeks. So we would be looking to propose that chorus NP, that time on Mondays where we normally would be teaching that class for me on Mondays, Lauren on Wednesday, Beth on Fridays, that we would use that block of time to rotate our students back into our rooms to do group instruction for lessons.
Tim, can I ask, is it okay if I ask a question?
Absolutely, yeah.
So so what would happen with the chorus non-performing students under this proposal?
Yep. So
Can I add into that? I just want to share that Mr. McCarthy is making proposals that have not been. I want to be fair, Mr. McCarthy, with the board to say that those proposals have not been kind of gone through with colleagues, because what they do is they end up. What ends up happening is the music teachers will end up gaining time with students for music, but our academic teachers will end up losing prep time based on the proposals that they're going, and that's prep time to prepare for important academic content learning. So I want to preface this by saying, if we have other colleagues that are on the line, that these proposals are coming from the music department and are not part of any suggestion. I want to just clarify that publicly, because I don't feel like it's fair to make it seem like I'm making plans for educators when I'm not. So I just need to be very clear about that right now.
So Ms. Young, have you reviewed the music department's proposals?
I have, and we've had an opportunity to discuss it.
Okay.
And we took a look at what was there, and there are some pieces that we want to look into, but I have concerns, and I expressed those concerns with the music department about removing academic preparation time away from teachers. All of our teachers in the building teach 5 contacts with 2 preps. We would have to look at how to go about doing that in ways that are equitable and that also meet student needs. And it also means another change for families as well. So I just, I understand, and it's fair for the music department to assert the proposals. I just don't want them to come across as proposals that I have approved at this point, because I feel like that would be disappointing to colleagues who haven't been engaged in that conversation about how to solve the issue.
So can I ask if you're aware of their perspective on how things are going, and you've reviewed their proposals? Where are you at in terms of addressing the negative outcomes that they've highlighted?
So in terms of addressing the negative outcomes that they've highlighted, I think we need to take a look at them. There's a couple things that we've talked about internally, is looking at some of the academic needs of those students in a non-performance class, and whether or not, and one of the things that I guess.
I'm sorry, you don't have to tell me specifics now, because it sounds like obviously it's in that phase, but I guess I'm curious if you are looking to address those, if you are looking to make additional changes essentially to the music this year.
Yeah, I think that we need to take a long, hard look at whether or not making changes is advantageous to our scholars in terms of changing routines at this point. One of the things that I will say is that when I look at some of the numbers of students who are engaging in the classes, in terms of the band classes and then the orchestra classes and choir classes, we are seeing an increase in enrollment. And I know there's some catch up to do in some of the older grades for that. However, when I go back and look at some of the information about some of the attrition that was happening in those courses, what was ending up happening is we were having several students moving out of band and orchestra and chorus who would then go into general music, and we were seeing a bubble in general music happening. So it's almost like kids are, if they're not, and so one of the conversations we had as a music department is, does our value system at Glen Hills indicate that all students need to have music in grade 7 and 8? Like, there are some bigger, broader questions that need to be discussed, because what we're seeing is the attrition of those courses. And then, Mr. McCarthy and Ms. Woodward also brought up the fact that there are disciplinary issues within the non-performance class, or that management is difficult. You have kids who are opting not to participate. We don't allow kids to just check out of math class. We need to also engage them in curriculum. So, and I think the music department is trying to look for successful ways to engage those scholars right now. But I would be concerned about us making changes without looking at all aspects of what that means to those scholars who are a part of that program. Because what's being suggested in their proposal is that those students just be put into a study hall at this point, rather than continuing a music program.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to sidetrack you, Mr. McCarthy.
So we do have a couple more bullet points under the music team's proposal for number 1. So Lauren, I'll kick it back to you, top of the page.
In January 2022, we are proposing that we assign the chorus non-performance students to an opportunity with their home-based teacher. The current enrollment for chorus non-performance is 29 students, and chorus non-performance 7th grade is at 32.
So if this would be a workable proposal, dividing the groups into 2, where you'd have 15 or 16 kids to go through either a guided study hall or resource period, whatever focus is taken would be available if this is a proposal that would go forward.
Each of as an example on how this would impact, each of the grade level team members would be responsible for splitting the load in 8th grade. Miss Block and Miss Clark could each have a group of 15 scholars on Mondays and Wednesdays. Mr. Birmingham and Miss Malone, the other part of that team, could have the group on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And again, they'd be offered a similar stipend to address the additional work that's brought upon by that. So that's proposal number 1. Our secondary proposal is just simply reinstating the 0.5 position that was cut at the start of the year, and having a certified general music teacher come in and take over the responsibilities to those classes. So that's our information, and with that, we're here for questions or further inquiry.
Mr. McCarthy, if I could just make one more point, I guess Mr. McCarthy has been here 37 years. Sorry. But the first 36, he had time for band lessons for everyone in the band program. And this is the first year that there isn't time. And so that's basically where the proposal is coming from, just finding an extra hour or 2 in the week for him to be able to reach the students who are not beginners, because right now he's teaching we all are teaching through our preps to give those opportunities to kids.
Yeah, I had band lessons from Mr. McCarthy. So
and
it is kind of
survived.
Yeah, it's kind of disappointing that you can't or don't have time to see everyone.
So as an example, current students in orchestra band that have been with us and are in 7th and 8th grade and they play, the only interaction we have with them is in our large group rehearsals. So I don't get a chance to break them down by section or and work with them.
That's a big deal.
It is.
So, but you teach 4th grade band now.
So that's a new addition this year. Yeah, we added 4th grade band, and it's a pre-band experience. So they're not bringing home tubas and French horns and trombones. They get the first half of the year is on a recorder, and we use Chrome Music has a wonderful music lab that we use, and then the second half of the year it'll be on pre-band instruments, which there's 4 options of them, and it's a really exciting opportunity for 4th grade students to to experience and jump in a band instrument. And that also, I mean, that's another 5 day a week, 15-minute assignment, which previous years that would have been lesson time.
Oh. How many periods are there for during the day?
So currently 7.
7.
And
So
then,
you have 5, but it's on a rotation.
so every day,
Excuse me, Mr. McCarthy, we're 8-period day.
oh, okay. So the assignments are most of the staff in our building are 5 classes with 2 preps.
Okay.
And that's the same for band, chorus, and orchestra teachers too.
So then where does the 8th come in?
That'd be their lunch period, and
Oh,
they have a
lunch
lunch period, and they have a 20-minute duty. So our students have a lunch period as well in there. So that's the 8th period. So in previous years, Mr. McCarthy taught 1 less prep than other teachers because he did not have the 4th grade band.
Right. So that's when you did lessons?
Correct. And then also working through the rest of the day too. There's a lot of flexibility with our instrumental music lesson program.
Oh, right, because you could do it. You could split it up over your 3 periods. Huh?
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
And so I guess I would just say, I asked Allison for this update because I have a specific question, a couple high level questions, mainly because I had heard that there were changes to the music curriculum, but was not aware of sort of what they were. So my goal in asking for this update was not to in any way micromanage how you're addressing the what is going on and sort of how you want to address that, but it was to understand what is going on and what you are looking at and what you are thinking about, and to just make sure that, you know, it was a big change that we instituted when we did, and the community and the board had questions and concerns and was curious about how it would go. So we made a commitment as a board to continue to stay on top of it and follow up and check in. So that was, just want to preface that was the purpose of my asking for this update. And some feedback that I have heard from community was around class sizes. And so I did ask Ms. Weiss if you could directly speak to what the current class sizes are for the sections in the music. And I do hear Mr. McCarthy and the music teachers talking about that. So I guess I would like a little more specifics on that, if possible.
I can start with our bands. All of our bands, with maybe the exception of 7th grade, are over 30 in number, and 4th grade is 4th and 8th grade. I think would be the biggest groups that I have in the band. So again, over 30 consistently.
And then it was 28, 29 for the non-performing chorus, right? 7th and 8th.
Yeah, 29 and 32.
29 and 32. Are there any other sections or classes, or is that about plus 30 in all the classes? That's about what you're dealing with right now?
I think I have the smallest classes. I have like 28 and 26 in my 7th and 8th grade. So that's, I think, by far the smallest of the 3 groups.
And those class sizes, just as teachers, I guess I'm just curious, it sounds like I'm hearing you say the non-performing classes are hard to manage. Are you finding those class sizes tenable in general in the other areas? Are those workable? Do those feel okay? Or
I think I'll speak for myself. Traditionally, I really like to have really large groups because generally the kids that are choosing to play an instrument want to be there. And so that's, I guess, the challenge this year with eliminating the class that they used to be in. And it's no different than any other, the math teacher or anybody, if they don't want to be there. The difference is it's like teaching addition and algebra at the same time if they're coming into 8th grade as a beginner. And then so that's where the numbers are difficult for me, because I think if it was 30 kids that had all been playing for 5 years or whatever, or 50 kids who've been playing for 5 years, it's a totally different animal than 15 kids that are new, and so that's where our difficult.
Yeah, okay, I understand that. And then I guess the other two questions that I have are around, so we talked a lot when this change was made about students with IEPs or 504s, and there was concern about how we might accommodate students. And I guess I'm just curious to hear if we feel like we are sort of satisfactorily meeting the needs of any students who may have felt, challenged or needed accommodations. I know we can't be specific, but is that at all part of, how is that going? How are you feeling about that as administrators and staff? Are we, yeah. Does that make sense? It's kind of an open question, but that was a community expressed concern throughout this process. And I guess I'd just like to check in on how we feel we're doing.
There is an extra adult in the room with the choir NP. Of course, there's a significant percentage of that class that have IEPs. So there's an aide that comes with that class. So that is an extra help.
Okay.
But I do believe that aid is assigned to a specific student and not as a co-teacher or an assistant.
Okay.
And in our performance classes, I think that's where, I can speak with relative confidence that that's where we shine. Having students that come into our classrooms at all different levels and all different abilities, that's really what makes music cool at Glen Hills. We can get everybody in there and they can do something at some level. And so to differentiate, a percussion section, it's totally possible. And that's what we do. And that's where our expertise lies.
Okay.
I would just like to add from an administrative standpoint, I know Ms. Woodward brought up the high percentage of students in a non-performance class. To me, I would have concerns about marginalization when we're trying to promote inclusive environments for our scholars. So there is some undertones of that and sort of where kids fit, and it's not true as a whole. It's not a rule of thumb, but there is the numbers, and looking at them as just raw numbers would speak to that. And there's some concern around that from the standpoint of the work that we're trying to work with our special education teachers and our regular education teachers staff on promoting more inclusive environments for our scholars.
Okay. And my last question, famous last words, but seriously, I think it is so the way that these changes came about, I'm not really aware of sort of the timeline or phase, and that's okay. I don't need to be, but there was feedback about how the changes were communicated, and I don't know exactly how they were communicated. I think maybe students first, eventually families, and I guess as you look, well, if there were changes made in the future, I guess I'd like to understand how the changes happened and how they were communicated out, and if that is sort of if that was satisfactory, if that was good, if that's how we would continue to sort of approach any future changes that would happen with curriculum or music in general.
Right. So I would say one of the biggest challenges, and I'm going to speak on this from a global, just from more of a global environment, is learning how to navigate students after a pandemic and be responsive to their needs. There are many, not just in music, across the board, many ways in which we have to be reflexive and responsive in our practices. And so if I'm looking at putting scholars in a larger space, and it was communicated to me at the beginning of, or the end of last year, that we could have larger music classes, because like Ms. Woodward was saying, that actually works to their advantage sometimes. And when we got into that space and realized hey, that's not a safe space for kids, it's not working for us, we have to be responsive to that. And so I would say that if additional changes would be made, it's one of those things where earlier this year, the concern for us in the space of the choir was that it wasn't safe, right? So we made those changes relatively quickly, and our communication probably lagged behind, and I'll take ownership of that. So yes, going forward, like what I'm saying to you about making changes that are thoughtful, I think we're in a place where we can make thoughtful changes that are surrounded around scholar needs and are responsive to scholar needs.
Yeah, and part of it is that I just don't even know what our process would be around communicating curriculum changes, and what would dictate a family communication or district-wide communication, or what just needs to be communicated to students and teachers. That's my own ignorance or naiveness, I guess. So that's kind of why when it was brought to my attention, I was like, well, I don't really know exactly how this is supposed to be communicated. And I don't know if we have a process, or if it or if it should vary. And so that's just like a sort of a higher level thing for me to better understand and to understand whether we do have a process or want to, or maybe it's better that it's reflexive, but I do believe sort of that we should be proactively communicating before we're being bombarded with questions. And I think that as in general, that's something we're sort of striving for with our communication as a district, not just around this issue, right? I mean, I think that's a fair statement. So I think that's sort of what came up here, and that's why I was asking. But thank you. I appreciate that response. And that's it for me.
Okay, well, I guess we can call on, it's Estrida, right?
There we go. Thank you. Yes, Estrida Kelger. So I appreciate the chance to speak tonight, since I understand that you're wanting to have more conversation at the committee meeting. So I was happy to see this item on the agenda because it did really cause some concern in the spring and in the summer as there were changes proposed. I just wanted to highlight how wonderful and outstanding the music program has been at Glen Hills and continues to be. And it's thanks to the professionals we have in the music department that really make it so. So I just wanted to start by thanking them for their hard work. And I was heartened that the teachers were invited tonight to share their perspectives about what has and hasn't worked, because I think it's really important for the board and the community to hear right from them about how these 4 months have been. And I'm speaking also as a parent of a band student who has missed those group lessons this year. So my daughter, this is her 3rd year playing the clarinet, and she hasn't had a chance for a single lesson, as we heard, not because of a lack of effort, absolutely, or a lack of not wanting to, but just the minimal time. And I think it's really hard for students to learn an instrument if they're in a room of 30 students, only maybe 2 or 3 who are playing the same instrument and have no opportunity for additional instruction. So I just really wanted to highlight that that's been a critical piece. As Mr. Wynn was saying, that's how he learned, right? Is that individual instruction that our district has been able to provide. I know it's been challenging for teachers, but it's also been challenging for students to be in these larger classes, to have changes made that weren't always clear to them about what was happening or why in terms of the class composition changing. So I just hope that there are opportunities to keep brainstorming and thinking about what would be any solution to kind of address some of these challenges. Finally, I know Ms. Young mentioned the importance of prep time for teachers teaching academic content, but it's important prep time for music teachers, I believe, is important too, and they're already using their time to teach additional lessons. So I just wanted to highlight that additional importance for them. So thank you.
Thanks, Estrida.
Yep, thank you. Okay, so does anybody want to share anything else?
I guess I would just ask that this continues to sort of be an ongoing discussion as updates are necessary for this committee. It sounds like obviously things are happening or things are in consideration. So I guess when you guys feel it's appropriate, even if no major changes are made, I think a periodic update about this would make sense.
Yeah, because I don't think like we can make a change. It has to happen with teachers and administration. So yeah, the conversation can continue. I think that would be good.
That's all.
Okay.
Thank you. Thanks.
All right. So let's move on to strategic planning. Oh, and this is an action item.
No, it shouldn't be an action item,
Discussion.
just
Oh,
discussion.
never mind. Okay.
So I brought I brought Ms. Prass to the last board meeting, so we wanted to bring it to committee in case there were questions or more conversation, just to bring it to committee so that we could provide that opportunity. So what I did is really, I just kind of attached some of the same documents. I also did share with the board the scheduling doc because we were looking at starting the work in January, so I wanted everybody to get a jump on that. Basically, what we're starting to see that's really exciting is the work from the special ed audit, the gifted and talented audit work, and the communication survey that's going to go out in January. I think all of that is going to kind of start streamlining right into the strategic planning process. So once we get input from all the stakeholder groups, then there would be another major update to the board. So after they met with the board, after they met with all the administrators, after they met with teacher groups, parent groups, student groups, and pulled all that information together, that would be another opportunity to bring all of that kind of baseline data back to the full board, just to talk about what some of the priority areas are, what some of the goal areas are going to be, what our major pillars are going to be, what do we care about as a district. And so that's all information that we're going to get through all of those interviews and talking to all those stakeholder groups, including students. I can't remember if I said students or not, but they're also included in that. So I just wanted to share and reshare the timeline. So the timeline is that we would love to have a finished product in June, which would also work really well with the communication survey timeline, because then we'll have all of that information so that we can put those strategies right into our strategic plan. We'll have some really good baseline information around inclusive practices and special education and gifted and talented and intervention and all of the curriculum and professional development work that Jenica's working on. So I think it'll really all come together early spring by getting feedback from everybody and all the other work that we've started this year. Policy work even, could be one of our strategies and one of our pillars around board governance. So it's tough because I can't predetermine what the district goals would be because it's based on all the feedback from all those people. But it's just exciting to know that we're going to have that level of focus so that going into the next school year, we'll have building plans that are aligned with the district plan so that we're all really working together towards some common goals as a district. So I just wanted to bring it forward in case there were more questions or more discussion, or if you had feedback for me that we want to make sure that this is part of the process, or can this be part of the process, so that I know that ahead of time.
I did.
Yeah.
So a couple, I wanted to, for the stakeholders and the focus groups, I wondered about different kinds of community members that aren't outlined, whether it's alumni, student alumni, whether it's retired staff or teachers, or, I think that all the focus groups as they are now would sort of focus on everyone in this moment in time. It would capture where we are now. And we're so new in a lot of ways that I wonder if there's historical data that would help inform us, help inform some of the stuff. Maybe not. I don't know, but just sort of thinking about a community focus group that might include some of those folks, if we were strategic about that, if that could be helpful, that would be a suggestion to consider.
I like it, and I don't think it would be too difficult considering we have some retired staff working for us right now. So we can reach out to the people that we have access to, and then maybe they have access to other people.
Yeah,
and then we can work with Nicolay. As far as alumni, that's easy.
Exactly. Yeah, the Nicolay came to mind. I thought Dr. Moser may have, he's been a member of this community for so long and may have some good suggestions, and I would include him as well, probably in that group. But yeah, that was my idea. And then I'm trying to clarify the tangibles that are coming out of this. And that could be something that happens offline too, but what I came up with is they create a 1-page summary that's strategic plan for external. Then there's an internal action plan, right? And then there's an executive summary, which maybe is the same as the 1-page summary for strategic plan. I'm not sure, but it also may include all the data from the focus groups. And then, so maybe it's different than the.
Yeah, so the executive summary would be sort of all of the data, like you're saying, and all of our conversations and information and all the strategies we brainstormed and the work as a team
Okay.
versus the other piece being kind of like the shiny product.
Yes,
that
okay.
community
Okay.
sees, yeah.
And then the district level action plan is mentioned twice, so I'm assuming that there's just one district level action plan.
Yeah, so actually it's interesting because there would be one, but then there would be two building action plans
Okay.
too. There would, you know what I mean? So there'd
And
be
we
like.
will opt in,
different
if it
action plans.
says site level available upon request, we will be opting into doing that.
Yeah, yeah. And then a big part of it too is, and this isn't like, this is work they'll help us set up, but then we would do this work as a leadership team, would just be that progress monitoring. So that we'd be getting together as a administrative team and checking in on those strategies and looking at it's because we obviously have to say, okay, here's a strategy, here's how we're going to measure it, here's how we're going to know it's successful. And so that progress monitoring is something that will continue, but that would just be another document, you know,
Okay.
where we would actually like monitor that. Lots
Yeah.
of times we'll use like red, yellow, green. Like say if we had a strategic plan, we started in September, we'd get together in January and we'd code everything, the building level and the district level, to see how we're doing on different areas. So those things would be reported out to the board.
Okay, and then is there like, what is the breadth of the strategic plan which they're giving us? Is it a 5 year, is it 10 year? Do we not know that information? Is it?
So, yeah, so we would just do, I'm assuming we would just do getting it set up. And then as an administrative team,
You would,
lengthen
okay,
that out. Yeah.
okay, so the action plan the timeline is the administration sort of will overlay that timeline that they see.
Yeah,
That will-
because like, let's say we said literacy was a goal, obviously, and that Jenica had like some strategy or some new thing we're going to implement, that could be like a multi-year process. Do
Okay,
you know what I mean? So each strategy could be mapped out over different years. Yeah.
okay, great. Those are my questions. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm not gonna really have much until there's something tangible to look at. But
Yeah.
I guess I am always curious because there's a recommendation
Mhm,
for the school.
mhm.
So it would be good if they could cite where they're getting their research from
Mhm.
within
Yeah,
the
and
plan.
they did offer to like send some more like references, resume stuff. I could do that. The other thing
Yeah.
I could share too is I could just share some examples of strategic plans that would be really similar to
Yeah.
the end product
Yeah.
that I'm imagining, just so you
Yeah.
can kind of see what it looks like.
I
That'd
had
be good.
That's helpful.
that too.
Yeah, if
I
you can,
wasn't-
if you can share, yeah, what a final strategic plan looks like, that'd be good. Because I am curious, like, does it say you should do this? And if it says you should do this, I'd like to see like a citation.
Oh, you mean as far as like what they're telling us?
Yeah, because they're
So-
gonna come up with a plan, right?
What they're really doing is gathering all this information and data for us. And then we're sitting down as an administrative team and deciding, okay, based on all of this information, teaching and learning is an area of focus. Equity is an area of focus. Do you know what I mean? Like defining those. And then we'll say like, okay, so what are the strategies we want to implement in order to reach this goal, this goal, this goal? So they're not going to tell us what to do.
But they're
Do you know
not
what I
doing,
mean? They're just gonna help guide us in creating this like plan of priorities and
Okay.
goals, and then we put in, because it has to fit us, right? Like there's a
Yeah.
lot of amazing things we're doing right now that are gonna fit right into the strategic plan. It's not gonna be all new, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, are they gonna be part of that process though?
probably to the level that we want them to be.
Oh,
Like
okay.
if they want to give us guidance on how to write it and how we might set up our progress monitoring documents and things like that. But
Okay.
the administrative team's definitely going to decide like what strategies and things we're implementing. Because
you
our
can
district's
tell-
different than, you know.
Yeah.
So then you can grill the administration when they come up with their
Yeah.
recommendations, cite
Yeah.
your sources. Just-
Yeah, no, I'm just always curious what research people are using. 'Cause
Well,
I,
you know, some of it is like, okay, so if we were going to say employee engagement,
Yeah,
right, is one of our areas, then we're going to talk about rounding. And so
Yeah.
then we're going to have a goal to round with staff X amount of times, to look at rounding themes, to check in. We're going to have like a staff engagement survey. We're going to look at staff retention. Do you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's, you know what I
Okay.
mean? We're just going to come up with all those strategies on how to measure.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
No, that's, and this isn't meant to grill. This is, I'm just.
No,
so
I
it's-
don't want you to think that anyone's gonna tell us, do you
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like what needs to be in our.
Okay, all right.
No.
So that, but they do say in their process, facilitate development of an action plan. So it looks like, so it sounds like what you're saying is there's room for overlap as much as the administration wants to invite that in,
And they
right?
probably provide examples and here's how other districts set theirs up. And then we choose like what those action steps are gonna be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then I think having examples would be good for me as a board member who's not familiar with this process, to just have comparisons to understand, not that we have to do it how anyone has done it, but just to understand how
Absolutely.
it does work for some folks.
Mhm.
Okay,
Do that.
cool.
All right. Anything else?
I got nothing.
Okay, then let's move on to item C.
Professional development needs 22-23. So I asked Ms. Westfall to put some information together. I know we've talked briefly about the calendar being set, but needing to look at like professional development and parent-teacher conferences and some of those other pieces. So we wanted to just start the conversation around professional development.
Okay. All right, so I'm gonna just kind of run through my notes. I'll go kind of quick because I sometimes get a little detailed with my notes, but I just wanted to talk a little bit about professional development. And, it's a strategy schools and school districts use to ensure that educators continue to strengthen their practice throughout their career. The most effective PD engages teams of teachers to focus on the needs of their students. So that's really what we're kind of looking at here. School systems use a variety of schedules to provide this collaborative learning time and work time for teachers. When time is set aside for professional development and is used effectively, and parents receive reports about students' results, they realize the benefits to teachers and their students, that they really outweigh any scheduling inconveniences that we may have in the future. So I'm going to be broaching some ideas around how we can do some scheduling for professional development that will have, some stakeholder impact. So I'm going to just kind of push the importance of professional development in my talk today, and then just some different ways that we can utilize it and what some of the barriers that we have in the district currently. So just really looking at raising student achievement, that's the big thing around professional development. Okay. Some of the other things that are really important is looking at our new staff members and retention of staff members. So when we have new staff come into the district, we need to make sure that we have a formal process of making sure that they're being onboarded. So they're kind of juggling a lot of unfamiliar things, classroom management, instruction, curriculums, school culture, operations, test prep, administrative mandates, state standards, parent relationships. It goes on and on and on. So if we leave them to themselves, we're really not going to have that retention, right? A lot of teachers burn out. So making sure that we have those supports in place and providing that professional development for our new staff members is extremely important, providing that intensive PD. Also, just in public school systems, looking at professional development, it's most effective when it happens in the context of the educator's daily work. So when the learning is part of the school day, educators are engaged in the growth rather than the learning being limited to those who kind of volunteer or participate in additional learning opportunities. So if we have it during the day, then everyone participates. If we say, oh, you can go to this class, or you can watch this online webinar, or you can do this, then we don't have that equality of growing all of our teachers. And that kind of leads into, there's a lot of online professional development opportunities out there as well, which can be useful, but there's nothing like that in class professional development for students. So there's a lot of limitations around that, even though we can use it for some things like content knowledge and different things like that. So we as a district are kind of working toward, and I'm sure this is going to shake out in this strategic planning, is looking at professional learning communities. Really getting those teacher teams together, analyzing student data, And that's really going to help us grow students by having those collaborative conversations and having opportunities to look at the data on a consistent basis and problem solve with teacher teams. So just looking at different ways that schools do professional development. So a lot of times they'll schedule common planning times for teachers to meet during the workday. And we currently have common planning time. What gets tricky with our common planning time is at our elementary school, we have like 2 half-hour slots that are back to back. But when you're thinking about transporting 5-year-olds to their allied arts, coming back for a meeting, then you got to flip-flop them, go transition them again, then come back, meet, go back to the meeting, transition them again. It really turns out to be about 30 to 40 minutes of meeting time that's kind of broken up. So it's not very effective, right? And in the middle school, we do have those 15-minute slots. Some of the tricky parts is we don't always have our paraprofessionals that are available. We don't have all our special education staff available during those times. So then again, we're still not getting that truly collaborative time to meet the needs of all students.
I was gonna say, sorry, Jenica, I was gonna say that was one of the things I've noticed we're struggling with a lot right now is paraprofessionals, special education teachers, and regular education teachers. And you can't find a common time for all of those people to get together. And so for them to have some time to collaborate and talk about students would be really, really important.
Right, and that's just one piece to the professional development. We're not even talking about content professional development and, just growing our practice and instructional practices and, all the different types of PD that, are needed around UDL and equity and all of that. So a lot of times we might do extended hours. So it might be, before school or after school. Extended hours can be very tricky for staff. I mean, if we're extending them and asking them to work till 5:30, a lot of staff are exhausted and they're tired. Then we're paying our paraprofessionals to be there. They might only work a short day and now all of a sudden they go home and then they got to come back for an extended hours. So that gets real tricky. The other things that we can do is do different days throughout the year, which is what we're kind of currently doing. So we had one in November, we have one in April. So having a PD day in November and then another one in April, it's not fluid, right? So we're not looking kind of at student data, it's a one-shot deal because you really can't hold on, like what are we doing this whole time? And then, oops, we're gonna have another PD day in April. So it's really not moving our students forward. So that's really a struggle for us. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about some of those barriers that we're having and some possible solutions. So looking at, possibly before school, after school, early dismissal. And I'm gonna suggest early dismissal on a consistent basis. So our staff has an opportunity to consistently meet and collaborate around student learning. We've learned from the pandemic that having that Friday, that consistent Friday to talk about students has really made an impact. We've heard it over and over again from staff, how important that was. So I think I would like to start the conversation around this to see if this is a possibility for the future. There are many schools who do this already that we could lean on and kind of, talk with to see how things are going for them. I've worked in a school that has done this in the past and it was a huge benefit being a teacher.
In this region, Jenica, like near anyone near us or neighboring districts?
In Menominee Falls.
Oh, okay.
So every Thursday we had an early release. And so we were able to have we had a PLC and we were able to meet with our teams and we kind of changed some of it. So sometimes it was like the school goal, right? So then you can kind of really dig into some of those goals and have, meetings around those and set your grade level teams up and have meetings in your grade level teams and then kind of go back as a whole school. And then you can look at it district wide. So having that time to do the work is so important and having everyone be a part of it versus just some. And I think that's part of our struggle is it's some and not everyone.
And hindsight's always 2020, but I would say one of the things that I've really reflected on is that we went from all virtual to an asynchronous day to 100% of kids in school, and wishing that we had thought about like doing some sort of early release or asynchronous day, because it's just been a lot. It's been a lot. I mean, planning times are used up on, conferencing with students and student behaviors and, I mean, there's just so much. And like I said, hindsight's 2020, we didn't know how much the pandemic was
Literally.
even impacting us right now. But, just wanting to not maybe make the same mistake, because we're still going to be dealing with
Mhm.
the effects of this for several
Right.
years.
And I think you can be more, you can make changes quickly, right? If you're having these constant meetings. And I know we've been doing, having a lot of work done around, music and being reflective on that and making changes. Anna has done a phenomenal job with that, of constantly, seeking to make changes and making sure the students' needs are being met. But having this opportunity, I think, would be really helpful. And it's hard for staff, right? Because they are having meetings during their collaboration time and stuff like that. I know that there's, a lot of staff interest in trying to get back some of that time, and being able to have some set times around it.
We did get some feedback from staff too, even around, missing that opportunity to be in the same space at the same time, because when it's that common planning time, it's just a grade level. It's not, an opportunity to get everybody together. So
Vertical.
yeah.
It'll be interesting to see what community feedback would look like. But I mean, I've heard from a lot of folks in various districts, just like what did we learn from COVID, if anything, when we've just returned to doing things almost exactly the same when things are not exactly the same. And a lot of people did appreciate that 4-day, week. So I'll be curious to see sort of what the feedback would look like. But I'm definitely open, and I'm sort of happy to hear we're even considering doing something different that could benefit a lot of folks, so.
And it's going to not be an easy thing for families, right? So if you do an early release, I mean, I'm just have to be honest and put it out there. I mean, you're going to have 4 days at a certain time, and then it would be, earlier for other times.
Communication will be really important about how this is presented and what the benefits might be to students overall, right? And then thinking about what supports or how we could make the transition, if it were to happen, how we could support families too, I guess. But
Exactly. Take some barriers out of the way for that.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, so it's not all.
We just wanted to start the conversation now, because we're already seeing, I can't tell you how many meetings where we're like, we just don't have time to do this, or we can't get them together for this, or we can't, and it's, it's a challenge.
Yeah.
How long are class periods right now?
For which school?
Glen Hill. Oh, yeah. Okay. So sorry, Glen Hills.
Glen Hills is 50 minutes.
50. So then with an early release schedule, what would the class times be?
We'd probably, most of the time you have a different schedule for that day.
Yeah.
So if we had a Wednesday early release, we would look at what that Wednesday schedule would look like to maintain, you know what I mean?
It.
So, okay. Well, because you wouldn't have to do lunch, right?
Right. We talked about that too, though, because we wondered if that's something we'd want to maintain. So that's still something we'd be talking about. Yeah,
because I will say, I mean, I have early release, and it's nice. I mean, because I only miss I don't think it's more than 15 minutes that I miss. So from a content coverage perspective, it's still manageable. But I guess with this, it would depend on the frequency.
Well, and I would say the benefit is if you're getting so just pushing on that a little bit, if you're getting teacher teams together to talk about what your essential standards are and how you're going to measure them and how you're going to be consistent and have common assessments, that's going to strengthen instruction minus the 15 minutes. Do you know what I mean? It's going to be higher quality.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying this.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I'm just saying from it depends on the frequency and how much time is actually taken away.
I just had to give it to you a little bit, Ben. I know what you're saying.
Yeah, I don't think it's gonna make a huge impact, and it would be like, I'm foreseeing it, and this is just my opinion, is like a compacted day.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Shorten
I
classes,
mean,
run a full day, shorten classes.
I think that would be a good
Mhm.
idea.
Because then you have those touch points, and you can even utilize that as a reteaching day, right?
Yeah, and how often?
Again, my personal opinion of how the direction I would like to go in, I would say every week, and I think that's consistent for families.
Yeah, we talked about that and, having that
Saw your face, Ben.
consistency.
What?
And,
I
we
saw
talked
your
about,
face.
Oh,
we talked about having that consistency, and then like, there's obviously some weeks that you wouldn't do it. You know what I mean? Like the first week of
Not a
school, or
3
we just got
week.
back from Christmas break, or you know what I mean? Thanksgiving week, like there'd be a few, but the consistency piece.
Are you starting the conversation now, looking to this as something that would be for the next academic year or possibly implemented sooner? Next for
We're looking
22,
at next year, yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Mhm.
Cool. Well, I'd be curious to learn more about the districts that do it and how they do it as this conversation grows. Just, I
Yeah.
wasn't familiar with that, but I'm very interested in learning more.
Yeah, we
Definitely.
could start pulling some of that.
every 2 weeks might be a good thing to look at too.
How hard to plan every 2 weeks? I mean, thinking
Yeah.
about families, if you're gonna do something, I do agree that consistency and as much advance notice as you can about something being a regular would make the most sense. But that's just me.
And
As
Ben,
a
when you
parent, I think that I would prefer to just know that it was
Yeah.
every week, but that's just, yeah.
well, and
my
it depends on how
perspective.
much time too. So I don't know, Ben, how long you're, how early you get out too. So if you're looking at, getting out an hour early, every week
Yeah,
versus, a longer extended hour, that makes a difference too.
yeah, we weren't thinking like like 11 or like some,
Right.
what I mean? Like, it was more in the afternoon.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. No, I'm not saying it's a bad idea.
Yeah,
Just
no, I
like
hear you though. Yeah.
Concerns from a teacher perspective.
Absolutely. And obviously, like preliminary conversations, but obviously we would be getting teachers' perspectives and families' perspectives and, getting that information too.
Yeah.
Okay. And I would, so this time it would be spent, it wouldn't be like a presentation. It would be teacher teams meeting.
We'd probably have to like do some learning around that first, what does a PLC look like? How are we going to structure this time? But then eventually, yes, it would be.
Okay, that's good.
And not to say that sometimes there wouldn't have to be a whole class PD, you know what I mean? A whole group PD, if you're all, looking at, writing new essential standards, or you need to go over, okay, we need to adjust our common, formative assessment in this unit. So sometimes there might be that type of work, that needs to happen during that time. But the goal is to have it for PLC work.
And what would the middle school teachers do? Would they meet with the 8th grade team, or would it be like 6th, 7th, and 8th grade math?
It would most likely be with some of their grade. That's the tricky part, right? Elementary could easily do, when you're looking at elementary, right? They could easily do their grade level teams. There could be a mix for middle school. And that's why I like every other week, because you can mix that. So you can do your content teams sometimes, and then your grade level teams sometimes. So you might have to do some vertical alignment based on standards and making sure that we're, doing that alignment, and how are we moving students. And you might do it on the flip side back to that grade level work, right? Because if you're teaching science and you're teaching social studies and your goal is literacy, you're working with the ELA teacher, how can we do those disciplinary literacy standards across the grade, across the classes, and how are we making movement on that? And what are we noticing about students? So it's kind of all the students are your students, and looking at it that way.
Sorry. It also gives us the opportunity even across schools. So like, while their time wouldn't necessarily be exactly the same, there'd be overlap. So if we wanted all the special ed teachers to get together, or we wanted, 3 and 4 to get together, and there's that, or allied arts, there's also that opportunity across schools too, which we've talked about, like that they never have time to talk to each other.
Well, the times would not align unless the school start time. Well, you may have to work to make the ending times align if our school
Right,
starts.
so if they each had like, let's say it was 2 hours, even if it was like, there's just one part of it, do you know what I mean, that overlapped for them to get together? So yeah,
It just makes for start times aligning. Just, you
another
know.
plug.
I'm okay with that.
Stop. Okay. Let's call it, this is a great conversation. Let's end it right. Just kidding. This is great. I'm excited to hear more about this, really. So.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
Anything else?
No.
All right, let's move on to item D then. So that's scheduling future committee dates.
Okay, so I was hoping that you two could get together in the next day or so, or now, whatever works. And just map out like January, February, March, April, May, June.
Oh, geez.
So that we
Okay.
would have,
What prevents us from having a regularly scheduled? Is it your schedule, Ben?
It is my schedule. I'm coaching right now.
So you don't have it's not the same week to week?
It varies when I have a Tuesday swim meet versus Thursday. And then, yeah,
What about your days? And what prevents us from perhaps meeting during the day? Anything?
I'm contracted.
So you can't.
I
what
can't.
time do you start pretty early, right?
So yeah, I start at 7:15
Okay.
or 7, and then I go until 5 for swimming, sometimes 6 or no, 5:45.
Do you have a consistent day of the week that, like, you know what I mean? Like on Mondays would be good, or on you know what I mean? Or is
Yeah.
it always?
Yeah, so I mean, Mondays I can meet at 6.
Okay, what about, you said Tuesdays, Thursdays, what about Wednesdays?
Wednesdays, I don't do dry land, so 5:30.
Okay, so can we work with Mondays or Wednesdays, and then you guys
Yeah.
could just pick one in January, February, March, April, May, June, and then.
Yeah, but swim ends in February, so I could do it earlier
Okay,
in March if we
okay,
wanted to.
okay.
So I could
Okay.
even do it at 3:30 in
Oh,
March.
oh, I like the sound of that.
So that's what I'm saying. Like it does change. Like I'm super busy from August until February.
So do you want to just say, let's, like, if you figure out January, February,
Yeah,
and then we can
do
kind of
that.
like reassess after that?
sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ben, you can text. I can text with Ben
Yeah, let's just
offline,
text.
and then we can.
Okay.
'Cause Yeah,
propose.
I just have to look at my calendar for, in case I have parent teacher conferences or something like that.
But I like the idea of having them set so we can publicize that. And then, I mean, my other goal is just, I generally kind of like to meet before the school board meets, the regular, but
Mhm.
things get all twisted when we meet after, and then, but
Yeah.
we can try to figure it out.
Yeah, and that was my reason for putting it on there, like we did for F and P, we set them through the rest of the year. Just so, like you said, Danielle, they're on the calendar, people can see them way ahead of time.
Yeah.
So they can make it if they need to.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
cool. Thank you.
All right, so now we're on to visitor participation on non-agenda items, right?
Mhm. Correct. Everyone's as tapped as me.
What?
Nothing.
Oh.
Sorry. My eyes are open, but
Yeah.
sure.
All right, well, I think that's it for that. So is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you to all the administrators who presented